What's up, y'all? This is a long one today. That's why I started it early. So y'all need to get your party packs and everything you need set on back now. I was looking through the YouTube to find something to do today, and I was thinking, check out some news outlets, because I've been up on the missing children stories. We got the 52 missing children in Florida, the Houston area, the Belia Davis, Ivy Brown, and so forth and so forth. And I was going through Inside Edition channel, and it shocked me. A day ago, they put out this video saying that this little boy, Etan Patz, right, was the most famous missing person. Why? I don't get it. They act like children ain't go missing before and after this child. Then he was the first person to be put on a milk carton. Why? I don't get it. Then it didn't bring national attention to the law enforcement till 1981 when John Wall's son, Adam, got decapitated. Why? I don't know. So basically, watch this video of my comparisons of Etan Patz and Belia Davis, and you tell me why they fighting for seniority, why people be fighting for fame of stuff that's stupid, like a killer goes and kills a whole bunch of people, and people think it's some kind of sexy, weird shit, and it's not. It's just stupid. And serial killers, when they say things to the news or the news outlets, they get more coverage than somebody giving to the homeless. So, like I said, this is a long one. Sit back, relax. I don't own the copyright to these videos, so don't find me, YouTube, and let's get it. Hold on, let me check first, y'all. So, while I'm getting this shit together, how's everybody doing out there tonight? Because we about to do it big, okay? Okay. Let me check over here, y'all. Hold on.
Ready to pair.
And
Paired.
so now we kicking. We in business, y'all.
Little boy whose disappearance gripped the nation.
A new lead in the disappearance of Etan Patz.
Etan Patz, little boy, it was just everywhere. It was just haunting. Many pictures I remember taking, including this one. I guess it shows a happy kid with a future. It's just joyous. My name is Carrie Boretz, and I am a photojournalist. I began in 1975, interning at the Village Voice. I remember it was early fall, and I was still really raw shooting. Every day I would spend a few minutes on the streets because I was still living with my parents on Long Island. So this was all very new to me, shooting on the streets of New York. It was a mother, you could tell, with a few kids all lined up, holding each other, holding the stroller. And it was just really a lovely image. And it wasn't a riveting image, but it was just sweet. And I knew I wanted to take it. And I shot one frame. I remember it was easy to shoot. The 70s was easy. There were no barriers. So this was just lovely. And I remember standing there. I do remember standing there in that corner just kind of, wow, can't wait till I have kids. So many years later, I decided to do a book of my street photography in New York, the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I have thousands and thousands of negatives. I scanned every single roll I had ever taken. I'll never forget the day. I'm looking with my loupe at the negatives on the light table, and I see this kid's face, and I printed it up, and there was Etan Patz.
At 7:55 last Friday morning, Julie Patz says she took her son downstairs. She came back up and watched from this fire escape as he passed down West Broadway toward the bus stop, where a group of other children and parents were waiting. She never dreamed he didn't get on that bus, not until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when he failed to return home.
Etan was this supposedly sweet, adoring kid who was just happy, and he was 6, begged his parents to go to the bus stop. They lived in a very family-oriented area of New York back then, Soho. Everyone knew each other. He was walking, and he went out of view, and that was the last time they saw him.
I hope he's with somebody wiser than he, who will take care of him and is still taking care of him. And if he is, I don't want to hurt you in any way. I don't want to prosecute. I just want whoever you are to bring him home.
Who could not remember that face?
You know what I find funny about these cases is, not saying that most of these parents had anything to do with the abducting or the child getting hurt, but it just seems like when they do, they not really no worse for the wear. Like, you'll never see them, like, break down to show no emotion or something. I guess everybody internalized and externalized the emotions a different way, but that shit just seems weird to me. Like, thank God somebody took the kid. He was getting on my goddamn nerves. That's what it sounded like to me. But hey, who am I? I'm just a YouTuber.
I was a little upset.
Yeah, whatever. About as much as Brittany is.
It was on every milk carton. I remember hanging out on the pier on Bank Street on the Village, just hanging out with my friends, and the airplanes would go by with the banners. Etan Patz, little boy. I mean, it was just everywhere. It was everywhere. It was the first big case, and the fact that he was just never found. And I held on to it for around a year. Part of me wanted to figure out how to get in touch with the parents, but I knew that the father had been a professional photographer, and they had dozens of photographs of him. And I didn't want to reopen any wounds. And so I held on to it. I felt like I had this little treasure of a life that had been destroyed, but just I had caught in a moment of joy, and I felt very protective of him. I felt really close to him in a way, and then I felt really guilty that I had held on to it. So I decided to reach out to an editor at the New York Magazine, and they did this piece about it. And subsequently, they found the guy who did it, and they brought him to trial.
A man has reportedly just confessed that he killed the 6-year-old boy. He has been identified as Pedro Hernandez.
Pedro Hernandez is in a jail cell, seen here in pictures obtained by Inside Edition.
This photo from Inside Edition's website shows Pedro Hernandez.
The DA called me and said, "We just saw your photograph. We'd love to have it and blow it up and keep it in the courtroom and use it as a photograph of, showing what was destroyed." I find it extraordinary that the sense of timing of all this, about the photograph being used in the courtroom, that it had just been published, the DA saw it and used it just in time for the indictment of this murderer of Etan. I'm glad they got the guy. I'm glad he was indicted. And if my picture had any part of that, I'm happy about that. Of course it didn't. But, the fact that it was in the presence of that courtroom sort of completed it for me. I mean, it wasn't going to sway the jury, but there was a little tiny bit of positive feeling on my part that I had shot this, something so innocent and ordinary. It was just an ordinary photograph, which is really what I shoot. I shoot ordinary moments, that become extraordinary sometimes in a way. And this became horribly extraordinary.
He was sentenced to 25 years of life in prison. And his body was never.
Over 8 million people worldwide use NordVPN to access online content. choose.
Just sitting there wasting
Well, I can tell you, in speaking with the father and her extended family, this little girl is deeply loved by a large amount of people. He tells us he is heartbroken right now. He could barely come up with the words to speak with us. Here's what he had to say.
We know that
Surrounded.
Here's another one of those parents I'm talking about, niggas. Focus. That's it. Long ass video.
By his family, Craig Davis spoke with ABC 13 in his first interview since his daughter's disappearance. Investigators say 4-year-old Malia has been gone since Friday.
I haven't spoken to the public because I
Got to shut the fuck up. Get the dick out your mouth. It's everybody fucking Dorian, man. They trying to protect him like he Michael. Oh, by the way, I saw that movie. Blah! Stupid movie. Damn it, it's dumb. Michael ain't dead, bitch. Oh, side note. Sorry. Rambling thoughts. Mental illness is a bitch.
I can't talk about my daughter I can't control my emotions.
But I ain't this mental though. I be done killed me a nigga by now.
I can't predict myself. I break down and I cry.
In a video posted to Instagram, Davis shared sweet moments with his daughter as he anguishes over her whereabouts now.
Good.
Investigators say Malia's stepfather was the last person to see her. Darian Vince told police he was driving to the airport Friday night with Malia and his...
Hey, if I sample that 100 she did in the video, would it be too soon? Would it go platinum? World star, let's see.
1-year-old baby boy. He pulled off at Greens Road and 59 to check a tire.
Side note, I hate this motherfucker.
That's when he says he was ambushed by 3 Hispanic men in a 2010 blue Chevy pickup similar to this one.
Nigga was one of them, Pedro.
Vince says the men kidnapped the family. He says he was in and out of consciousness and was dropped off in Sugarland Saturday evening with the baby, but Malia, he says, was gone. Desperate for answers, this father says he wants to speak with that stepdad.
I'm not putting the blame on anybody.
Bitch ass nigga. Don't they all say the same thing? No, jiggy. His mama said, we don't want to prosecute you. We just want you back to bring the baby back. He said, I ain't put the blame on that's the motherfucking lie. I be blaming everybody I see. I blame the dog. He didn't bark loud enough when he took my kid. I blame the mailman. He didn't say nothing when he took my kid. I'm blaming everybody. I'm digging up niggas to... These some bitch ass niggas, I don't care. That's why they all got something to do with it. They be happy as hell. Because they say Charlotte, Carolina is in jail for jumping across the say something, shit.
I just need the questions that aren't answered to be answered. There are so many...
Nigga, fuck that gay shit. Excuse me. Gay community, I ain't mean it like that. Yo, fuck that, son, because I don't give a fuck. I don't want no answers. I just want some blood. I want blood. I want bones. I want calcium. I want plasma. I don't give a fuck. If you say her name wrong, I'm stabbing you in the face. Kind of shit. I'm just saying. My life just came out. It just came out.
Answer questions. And it's not for the public to answer them for me. It's not for police officers to answer them for me. It's not for the news to answer them for me. It's for Darian.
we have not seen him
to answer for me.
And the pressure to find her is intensified by the fact that she needs medical attention.
Did I say liar?
Malia recently underwent head surgery for a skull fracture from an accidental fall at home. Davis says even through her hospital stays, his daughter stayed strong and determined.
Even in pain, even in her injury, my daughter went through everything she went through, and it did not change anything about her.
CPS did investigate that head injury. It happened under the care of her mother and stepfather. She and 2 siblings were removed from the home in August, but returned in February. And Craig Davis does tell us he was able to meet with the stepfather, Darian Vance, over the weekend, but it was a brief interview and emotions. It was a brief get-together, and emotions were very high. He has not been able to get a hold of the stepfather since, and so he's just very eager to speak with him again to really understand what happened that led to his daughter's disappearance Friday night.
All right, let's move on, y'all. Let's move the hell on now. Here we go.
Center of the spotlight. Etan Patz, one of those first faces to stare at us from the milk cartons. He disappeared when he was 6 years old. He was on his way to the school bus. And today, decades later, police have mobile.
Hey, from a battle rap niggas from the 90s, who used to say, put your face on the milk carton, nigga. You want your face on a t-shirt? Shit. I ain't gonna even take kids, man. I was just rapping, nigga. I was just rapping. Just jokes, y'all. Just jokes.
Unleashing dogs to track new clues, vowing to work 24 hours a day to find an answer. And ABC's David Muir is at the scene at that crossroads tonight. David.
Diane, good evening. As you know, for 33 years, the parents of that little boy didn't move. They didn't change their phone number, hoping that one day, alive, he might call them. Well, tonight, in what could be a major break in the case, authorities are back on the very same block, looking for traces of their son. From the sky today, the view of that same New York City neighborhood, that same block, where 33 years ago, a little boy named Etan Patz, just 6 years old, disappeared on his walk to school. It was the first morning his parents let their little boy walk to the school bus alone. The national headlines of his disappearance frightened an entire nation of parents at a time when little attention was given to children who'd gone missing. The case ignited a movement, President Reagan at the time declaring Missing Children's Day. Tonight, more than 3 decades later, a major break. The FBI and NYPD are suddenly back, now believing it's possible Etan never got further than his own block that morning. Dozens of agents today preparing to dig out a basement in a nearby building along the path the boy took that morning. ABC News has learned that in recent days a carpenter, a handyman who once worked in that building, has now been questioned. A cadaver dog brought to the carpenter's old workshop, then picking up a scent. And that's why shortly after sunrise today, with search warrant in hand, they were back.
We're looking at what the warrant indicates for either human remains or personal effects or clothing.
It's believed that carpenter Othniel Miller had been friendly with the boy all those years ago, actually giving Etan $1 for helping him the night before he disappeared. Authorities never searched that basement, and charges were never brought in the case. Tonight, back in that Soho neighborhood of New York, the Patz family is still there, still torn.
I know y'all heard that, right? I ain't gonna see it. Just move on.
The father sitting down with ABC News a little more than 2 years ago.
I still gag with the fear that this child must have felt.
Okay, one thing. You might say, if you give it a benefit of the doubt, nigga, it's been 33 years. So he ain't got that much emotion more. But he said this child like it ain't his child. I'm just waiting to see if y'all caught that.
When he realized he was betrayed by an adult.
The story of his son changing this country and the way of life in that New York neighborhood. Today, Susan Schulson remembered raising her own children on that same block.
It was very disturbing to know that a child had vanished right on our block and that I would have to guard my children ferociously.
What so many parents echoed at the time, today those instantaneous missing children alerts are really a part of everyday life. And Diane, just moments ago, the FBI telling me that they finished digging for this evening. They will be back on the scene first thing in the morning to begin digging again. They plan to be here for 5 days or so, they say, until their work is done.
Someone's watching? No, they're not. NordVPN hides your browsing activity from all kinds of snoopers.
Pedophile was responsible for the death of Etan Patz, but Ramos was never charged with murder.
Investigators both from the federal prosecutor's office and the FBI over an extended period of time built up a tremendous amount of circumstantial evidence.
Not enough, though, to convince prosecutors they could make a murder charge stick, says Murray Weiss, a police reporter who covered the Patz case.
I don't even know about Patz.
It was a civil case that resulted in the judgment against Ramos. He was ordered to pay $2 million in damages to the Patz family. He has no money and is in prison for molesting a Pennsylvania child.
The Ramos case raises serious questions about the recent arrest of 51-year-old Pedro Hernandez. Police say he confessed to murdering Etan Patz, but they have no evidence.
It is, in fact, a murder case standing on its head.
It's going to be very difficult to convince a jury.
Larry Kobolinsky is a doctor of forensic science at John Jay College of Criminal Justice.
Normally, we collect the physical evidence and talk to the witnesses. Then we catch a suspect, interrogate him, and then sometimes they confess. This is just the reverse.
Police have no body and no motive. And what if there were no confession?
Alright, Joe. This is what happened. This is what the nigga said who supposedly, allegedly, what did he do? I guess he did shit. Fuck it. Guess what he said. Oh, and this can be graphic, so viewer discretion is advised. I got this shit right that time. They're like, yeah.
And Etan Patz, was he ever around the store at another time? Just
I never seen that kid in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You were working at the store for how long before this happened?
What happened?
Before this incident happened that brought us here today.
I think I was working there for a year. Something like that. I'm not sure. A year, 2 years.
And Etan Patz never came into the store?
I never seen him.
You never saw him in the store, or you never saw him,
Never
period?
seen him in the store. I never seen him before.
You had never seen him before?
Never.
Mm-hmm. When you did see him, how long was he standing there before you approached him?
5 minutes.
And were you watching him? Were you going up and down the stairs? What were you doing during these 5 minutes?
I went to the store, put the sodas in the store, come back out. And I started in front of the store, and there he was, in the front of the store.
Mm-hmm.
Then I approached him and I asked him if he wanted something to drink.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't answer me. He nodded his head. I went down to the basement. He followed me to the basement. And whatever happened there, I choked him. It was something that just happened, like, quick. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why it happened.
As you talk about it, are you surprised?
I don't even know if it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw his face.
So, when you went down into the basement with him, you didn't go into the store with him. You went down to the basement with him, and he followed you, or you said, "Come down to the basement with me."
No, he followed me.
Why would he just follow you down to the basement?
Where were you going to get the soda from?
In the basement. There was a fish in the basement.
So he went down the stairs, and he was behind you. Is that right?
He was behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went in front of me. I stood behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And I choked him. Then when I choked him, I started shaking. And there was a plastic bag and a box. Where did it came from? I do not know. It was tape.
Where did it came from?
So I put him inside the bag. Then I tied the bag with the same bag and put him inside the box. It was like a banana box, something. I don't remember what kind of box was it. It was a cardboard box. I put him up on my shoulder. I carried him out of the store, out to like a block away, a block and a half away from the store. There was people following me from the basement. All the people that were there at the same time when he was there. They followed me out. I took him, I put him like a block and a half away.
You know what?
I set him up on the basement, on the hallway. And I walked back to the store. And I started working just like nothing.
And so when you walked a block and a half away, was it east or west, or towards which street? Towards West Broadway?
I was living in West Broadway. So I went down to the right of the store. I don't know if that was...
I don't believe you did it.
I don't know if that was east. I don't know.
And we will find
north. I don't know. I was in West Broadway. Probably went down east. I don't know.
You said that he came out in front of you and you choked him. And did you give him a soda?
No.
Did he resist?
No.
What did he do? You were facing him from the back?
I was facing him from the back. He was like standing here, I was standing behind him. I shook him. He went down. Then he threw his hands.
Yeah. So y'all get the picture. This nigga, I don't believe he did it. They need to go looking. And I just don't understand it.
And he said everybody in the basement followed him out. How come somebody didn't say something? They just watch him choke this kid, put him in a bag?
Yeah, just lay him
and
there.
they go like they doing a parade?
Yeah, just lay him there.
One more.
Welcome back to NBC6. Before you head out the night at 8 Eastern.
HLN News and Views.
That I know, even if they watch on TV, before they let that kid walk anywhere to school, to the bus, to buy themselves, they tell him, don't talk to strangers, keep going.
I don't know who said he did all that. No, I don't think this nigga killed him, dude. They still ain't found his body.
You reckon he should have told that? He telling everything else.
And, now.
Oh, and also, other people should have been at the bus stop. And then the first time, somebody, and everybody knew everybody.
Yeah, but it's 1979, number one.
Yeah, but everybody knew everybody, so you would watch so-and-so.
Yeah, but that ain't what happened. That ain't what happened. That's why that don't make no sense. Because that ain't what happened.
I know, it's like they feeding them answers.
Yeah, that ain't what happened. Now, I got curious, and I looked on Google. I said, well, what's the most famous missing black child? And they don't know. So, they gave me a list. Wikipedia gave me a list of some 8 people, and everybody was white, except one. That don't sound right. And then it was in past 2010. So ain't no famous missing black children ever. That's lies. That's lies.
Let's go out to Naples, Florida. Joining us is Sergeant Ken Becker, the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. What can you tell us about the family? I mean, I believe the